I guess it's important to understand that my entry point is ceramics. A pretty straightforward sort of material to use when you're interested, as I am, in making objects and dealing with how humans interact and understand objects. This room is the official part of the house, I guess. This part that I'm standing in right now used to be the architectural studio of Saarinen, where his son Eero was working for him for a good 15 years, I think, almost. So the two interventions that I've done here, the first one, which is behind me here, is called The Future. And it's kind of a play on thinking about the modernist moment and thinking about sort of the potential to kind of dream about the future and the potential to kind of think about what the world might look like and what the world might be able to kind of develop into. There's a kind of humorous twist to it. So the glass ball is kind of a looking glass. It's like what you would find with a mystic or something like that. Something you could kind of go into, look into, see the future potential in some sort of occult way. The other piece that's here is a little more complicated. It's a piece that I did together with my mother. I tried to sort of bring in some of my own history as a way of sort of aligning myself with the history of the house and aligning my own sort of thinking with it. Not in a way of sort of saying that I'm in any way similar, but just in a way of saying that there's a specific kind of understanding that I've approached this house with. So the octagonal form is essentially just a reference to Saarinen's kind of main geometrical form that goes through many of his buildings around Cranbrook. And so we used that as a sort of a geometrical kind of component that constructed the whole piece. The ceramic piece that I did for my mother's weave tries to kind of also deal with some of the sort of stylistic kind of mashups that is happening in Saarinen's architecture. So this room here is what's called the book room. The piece that's here is actually not a piece that I made for the house directly. It was a piece that I was asked to do for an exhibition that was called No Object is an Island, which was over at the Cranbrook Museum a couple of years ago. And so I was interested in the sort of dynamic between father and son and how the hell that played out in the sense of, you know, what does it mean to work within the style of your father, who you then go on to kind of supersede in history, essentially in a very short time span. And so the lamp here is kind of a way of playing around this in a sort of humorous way, I guess, where you suddenly start getting into the sort of organic forms of Eero Saarinen's that is different from Saarinen's as well. And so it's a way of sort of dealing with the two through form typologies, through the history of decorative arts, through various sort of notions of object making, but kind of taking a cartoon-like twist on it. So the piece behind me here is in the dining room, which possibly is one of the most sort of recognizable rooms from the whole house here. And I chose this place to be the place where I tried to sort of deal with the condition of the house as such. So again, sort of using sort of the methodology of ceramics and decorative arts and those sort of things, I chose to use the format of a bowl because that would be possibly one of the things you would see on this table. Then with this bowl here, I made it in such a way that the glaze is sort of dripping upwards. So it seems as if gravity essentially is pulling the wrong way, or that something kind of almost cinematic is happening in the sense that suddenly we see an idea of material performing in the way that it normally doesn't. And so it's a way of kind of thinking about sort of the stopping of time, or almost how one would go into a cave and see sort of dripping stones and whatever else have you. So in one of the things that I all the time wanted to do with this exhibition was also to deal with sort of the notion of coloration in this house and how colors operate in this house as a sort of a perceptual device, I guess. One of the sort of little details of this house is this linen cabinet behind me here, which is all painted blue, and that's an old sort of household trick to essentially make your linens look whiter. So the 5 sort of lumps that are sort of all taking the form of a towel or something in there is glazed in a gradient of colors, so it goes from a warm white to a cold white, which is hardly sort of perceivable because it's in the blue cabinet. So in a sense, you have a gradation of color that's existing within there that then gets negated by the way that the whole thing is sort of set up. And I wanted it to be sort of, I guess, operate kind of metaphorically for how the various rooms kind of operate here. So how, you know, the various kind of sensibilities are being played out within each of the rooms and how that inflicts the body, the soul, the mind, and one's sort of being in that room. In here, I've made sort of, I guess, a Freudian piece, if anything, that really tries to kind of deal quite explicitly with the relationship between the father and the son, between Eliel and Ero. So the piece essentially is a sort of a long sort of lump that is amorphous in its form. Placing it in the bathroom is of course very intentional in the sense that I'm interested in kind of figuring out the sort of dynamic and figuring out and problematizing it, if nothing else, you know, in terms of when you read Eero Saarinen's writing, he's always extremely kind of respectful to his father. He said, you know, I'm a form giver, I just stay within the notion of my father's architecture and whatever else. But if you look closer to the history, the day after his father died, he went on and changed the name of the architectural firm. He shelved all the drawings that they were working on, and then he started doing his own thing just like that.